Welcome back to the Align Life podcast. It's me, Rachel Freeman, and I'm joined with my co-host, Dr. Devin Shea. And this week we have Stephanie Vanlochem on the show. Stephanie is a nutritional therapy practitioner and the founder of Cook by Color Nutrition. She believes in the power of cooking real food as nourishment for both mind and body. Cook by Color Nutrition teaches clients to find sustainable practices to feeding themselves and their families for health and enjoyment. Her mission is to meet people where they are in their journey and help them find their optimal wellness by cultivating realistic food and lifestyle habits to support their goals and needs. So welcome to the show, Stephanie. We're really excited to chat with you today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, Stephanie, good morning. What's going on?
Oh, just hanging out online with some people. It's pretty awesome.
Nice.
That is the coolest part about doing this show, is just being able to talk to people literally wherever they are at,
right,
no matter what time zone, what state. And you're talking to us from
Central Oregon.
How's the weather up there?
It's tricky. One day it's sunny, one day it's snowing. You never know.
I like that little gamble. So anyways, for our audience, will you give them a little bit more information about who you are, how you got into the health and wellness space, and kind of what you do with your practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am, kind of the product of a very healthy household. My mom always cooked at home. Both my parents are, I'm a first generation American, so they're both, my mom's from France, my dad's from Holland. And cooking was something that they both had in their early childhood years. My grandmother was an amazing cook. We were always in the kitchen. Like, the kitchen was always the most important room in the house. That's where everyone would gather. Family meals every single night. Even when, you're cranky and you didn't want to be in the same room with everyone, there was still, everyone sat down at the table. And growing up like that, it was definitely apparent to me that that was not the norm. A lot of my friends and my siblings' friends, they would come over and it would be like this cool new thing to have all this food in the cabinets and all of this cooking going on and smells and everybody sitting down and it being loud and fun. A lot of people grew up, eating at restaurants a lot, or to-go food, or, kind of fend for yourself and figure out what's in the kitchen. And I think that's something that was always, it really shaped a lot of who I am. However, I was not always very healthy in general, especially when I went off to college. I did host dinner parties in college. Like, that was kind of my thing. I would always have my, broke college friends. We would always, have these huge dinner parties and people would bring wine and I would make all the food, and it was definitely my thing. But, I was drinking a lot, and I was actually a smoker for many years. And I met my husband. I went to UC Santa Cruz, met my husband in Santa Cruz.
Go Banana Slugs.
Yes, banana slugs.
That is there. It's the only mascot worse than my alma mater at UC Irvine, which is the anteater. That's why I know that one.
Oh, you say worse? Like, it's a bad thing.
It's the worst. I'm sorry.
Banana slugger? What is that? I don't want to know, actually.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but I just had to get that off my chest.
I'm glad you can relate. Yes, banana slugs. So, yeah, my husband and I met in Santa Cruz, and at that point, I was just like the peak, like as unhealthy as I've ever been. Just, not moving, smoking cigarettes, eating junk.
That was just the French in you coming out, I feel like.
Yeah, it's just the wine and the cigarette.
Yeah, I feel like this is like very European of you.
It just had to happen at some point.
Yeah, it had to come out.
It did. So, but my boyfriend at the time, he was, this like boy from Wyoming who grew up hiking and camping and fishing and hunting and all these things outside, which, okay, going from being born and raised in LA to the Santa Cruz Mountains was a huge adjustment, a good one. But then to have that introduction where he took me camping for the first time, and I was like, wait, what are we doing here? We're gonna hike in with these packs and sleep on the floor. Like, this isn't in my toolkit.
Yeah, you needed some glamping, kind of like as a transition.
well, we got there eventually. I was
good.
like,
Okay.
if we want this to be a thing, like we're going to have to get a rooftop tent because I don't want to sleep on the floor with
Yeah, there you go.
But it just kind of over the years became years. I mean, a real like stick in the mud in our relationship where he would want to go do these things and I just felt physically incapable of keeping up. I couldn't really be the person who was like, yeah, let's go on this hike. And I don't know if I need these shoes or if I should wear this, like, am I going to be hot? I felt uncomfortable in my skin. I felt incapable in my body. And I just felt like even a gentle walk in like flat woods would exhaust me. And I was scared. I was intimidated. I felt like I had a lot to lose because, I loved him and I was like unwilling to change my habits. I was still smoking. And so it kind of got to this point where it was like, well, what kind of life do I really want to live? Is it going to be this, like, I'm always on the sidelines and he goes and hangs out with our friends and does all these fun things that I feel intimidated to participate in? Or is it the kind of thing where I change? And trust me, it was a long, slow change, but little by little, I did make changes. And you know what? Honestly, it started with things like Weight Watchers and, weird diet protocols that people swore by that were just totally not real food and, just very weird things that now looking back, it's just like, I can't be mad because it was the path that I took, but, I would love to help other people not have to go all these, off-road places that don't really lead to success. So yeah, all of that led to me being interested in nutrition and how to help people find a way to get on a good path for themselves that is sustainable and slow moving.
I think that I'm sure that most of the audience resonates with that journey of first off, making a decision and a choice that, okay, I'm ready to, change my life, not necessarily knowing where to start. So the obvious choice is to reach out to one of these popular diet programs and then experience that. And then usually there isn't a lot of long-term success. You will see results in the beginning and it might be the kickstart that you need, but it's hard to sustain when you're counting calories or points or macronutrients or whatnot all the time. So I think most people, I would say, who eventually got to real food have taken the same path or similar path as you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I've found that to be true with a lot of people. Like, oh, didn't you used to do Weight Watchers? Like, what did you end up doing? You look great, or you things seem like they worked out for you. And a lot of it is mindset. So that's something that you don't get with Weight Watchers is this mindset where it's like all about counting and all about tracking versus like really tapping into being like, well, how does this make me feel? And how is this sustainable? Like, forever I'm gonna have to count these points?
I don't think that they don't talk about that at all. It's very short term, although they say like, oh, you'll learn habits and things that will carry on for the rest of your life. But the habits because I too have done the Weight Watchers thing and have found that all I did was learn actually what calories and points were in food, not necessarily like long-term habits. And I'm like, I cannot maintain that for life. So I think that when you become more long-term focused and think like, what's a practice that I can sustain, that's where I'm like, you can't deny always eating real whole food because that's something that you can sustain. Obviously, You're going to vary off the path here and there, but if you always come back to real whole food, there's no really like wagon to jump off and on because that's just your framework that you live by.
Totally.
Stephanie, I'm really curious. To you, what does cook by color mean? Like if you were going to take that and spread the message, which obviously you have, and you're doing it at a high level, like what does that really mean for you?
So when I started this whole journey, I took you to the point where I decided to change. And then right after that, I decided to not right after. So I started changing and then I was like, I'm going to try CrossFit with this Groupon. And I went with my husband and of course he was like literally the fastest person always. And I was always the slowest person, always. And that actually led me to Whole30. which was how I got the whole like, oh, I'm going to drop all these weird Franken food protocols and, Weight Watchers ideas and just like eat real food. Like maybe that will work. So I started my Instagram account as Paleo for Two because we did a paleo challenge at our CrossFit gym. And aside from the fact that people always thought that I was pregnant, like I'm eating paleo for two, like
yeah,
that was
what
the name.
My first thought was, I was like, wait.
I was like, no, I'm not pregnant. I'm just like, I'm cooking paleo for me and my boyfriend and that kind of thing. I eventually changed the name to Cook by Color, but it took me like 8 months to figure out what I wanted the name to be. Because at that point it had kind of started gaining traction. And Cook by Color is this thing, this idea where no matter who you are or how you eat or what your food ideology is, eating colorfully is something that everyone can do and it like think about, as opposed to, some more polarizing or, different approaches like paleo specifically, like omitting all these other things, or keto, or like all these other, which obviously these work for so many people. So I'm not talking down about them, but I wanted it to be an inclusive movement where anyone, whether you're currently vegetarian like my sister or, junk food aficionado, like if you try to incorporate all the colors at every meal, then you're automatically crowding out brown food. And brown food is really my thing that I'm always trying to encourage people, like, okay, so if you have that baked potato and the gravy and the toast and the, like the sausage, like maybe you just need to think about it more like an art piece or something. Like what else can you put in there to jazz it up a little bit? And I get messages all the time from people like, I don't have the time, like especially moms, like I don't have the time or the patience to do, paleo challenge or this or that or overhaul my whole diet. But from now, like since I started following you, I see how you cook in your stories where you're just like, well, I had this and then I threw a little of this in it and I created this colorful plate. So yeah, I feel like it's the least offensive and most effective way for people to change their diet, without too much headache.
I love that. I totally agree. If you guys aren't following Stephanie on Instagram, you must. It's at Cook by Color. She has the most beautiful feed that I've ever seen.
Yeah,
it's
it is
so
really, it's beautiful.
Like imagine the rainbow like threw up with all these foods, and that's what her page looks like. But it
doesn't look like throw up.
But it doesn't.
Or smell like it.
But her stories are really cool too, because she does these little like demonstrations of what she has going on in the kitchen and kind of throws together a meal, and at the end it's very beautiful and incorporates all these colors. But what's funny is before we recorded, I was telling Dr. Shea that we were saying that, we're talking to Cook by Color today, and I was like, maybe I'll be motivated to cook with more colors because I'm looking down and everything I eat was, what did they say, green, white, and brown.
Green, white, and brown.
And then I pulled out my breakfast and it was a frittata that just had eggs, sausage, and kale, and I was like, see, sticking to my color scheme.
Hey, you got green in there. I'm in.
Yeah, green's the most vibrant color I cook with, but I definitely should do better. That's for sure.
Stephanie, it's so funny because we've been lucky enough to interview quite a few people from all these different walks that you've talked about, the paleo world, the keto world, and so forth. There's also the concept of like biohacking. And I think, unfortunately, nutrition has gotten so frickin' scientific that unless you have like a biochemistry background, it's almost exclusive. It's almost like you need so much information. And what's hilarious is that, and this is the genius of it, the simplicity and of your concept is like, just look at your plate, add something that you think is going to be colorful, and then boom, you've already accomplished the goal. It's so obtainable. It's so like easy for people. And I think your message is really awesome. So well done. Sometimes the biggest challenge for people trying to take a message to the marketplace is that we know all this information, but we know it too well, and we complex the hell out of everything versus
Right.
you had the ability to step back and just make it super simple. So good on you. Like that's a really cool way of tapping into it. I'm curious. So when it comes to like the way that you take care of yourself, you talked about this transition from your sort of your college years into, where you are as of now. Are there self-care practices that you've incorporated that, you feel like are ones that our listeners could be able to do with good success?
Self-care, like relating to food or
relating to,
Okay.
to your,
Yeah.
I think it would be more so like how you define health.
I mean, they both make sense. I just wanted to make sure I answered the right
Sure.
way.
Yeah.
So something that when I work with people one-on-one, usually it's like going into their home, which is, a very personal thing to like rummage around in someone's pantry and they often judged. We got a glitchy thing going on.
sorry,
Did you
we
say
glitched.
something?
Okay.
No
No,
worries.
it just cut out
Oh.
for a second. We're good.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's kind of this personal thing where I'm like poking around in someone's pantry and their fridge and they're like, oh, well, those have been there for a long time. Like, they feel
Right.
judged. And, so, I really come at it from like a very understanding, like even though I always had healthy food in my life, like my mom owned a chocolate store my entire childhood,
Oh, wow.
a Belgian chocolate store.
You were
that I
like
had
Willy Wonka's kid.
Totally. I had a key to it. Like I could go in whenever I wanted. It was serious danger.
That's hardcore.
Yeah, it was definitely hardcore. So like, I come at it from a very understanding and very accessible place. Like that's where I think that I don't look like the ideal nutritionist comes into play, where people feel a little bit more comfortable. So basically, what I do when I work with them is I kind of tap into that thing that I was talking about at the very beginning where, food is it's a meeting place. It's more than just, eat your feelings or fuel your body. It can be this like really special connection that you create with your family and treating it more with respect than I feel like a lot of programs do or a lot of like diet dogma kind of things do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's just to fuel your body, and I don't think that it's just to, fill your soul. I think that there's this really great middle ground. So kind of trying to help people tap into that. Like, what was your favorite food that your mom made? Or what was, bringing emotion in a positive way around food instead of always it being this like punishment or I ate this, so I have to do this or, because that's really what did it for me, is really tapping into the things that like were so impactful about food and family and tradition and stuff like that. So that's something that I try to do when I take them to the grocery store. Like the grocery store and like farmers markets, grocery stores, whatever, I love it. Like I have such a fun time going to the market, and I know people hate it. My husband hates the grocery store, especially when you go with me, because I'm literally like touching every papaya and like figuring out, I get really into it. So when I bring someone to the store and we walk around and they're like, well, yeah, I usually get broccoli and I usually get this. And, I try to get vegetables, and I'm like, well, look, like this is on sale and it's in season and it's beautiful, and like smell it and like think about like, what have you had it before? And making it this like opening up this world where it's not just a pomegranate, but it's like something like super exciting and special that they haven't experienced, or that, why not? Why not bring that home and see what happens,
Stephanie, do you have, maybe it's a collection of things, or maybe it's just one thing. Do you have like some staple things that you keep in your fridge that you pull out to be able to add color and health to a meal?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I love fermented foods, and I think that's something that a lot of people are like, ugh. Sauerkraut, is that thing that you buy in the shelf-stable aisle and put on hot dogs? Um,
Dodger dog.
exactly. So yeah, I do. I like to, I always have sauerkraut, like some sort of fun flavored sauerkraut. Sometimes I make it, sometimes I buy it. I always have tomatoes. I mean, sometimes they aren't the fresh or like the most seasonal thing, but I still go for it. Excuse me. Greens, just like a handful of spinach pretty much can jive up anything that you've got going on. I really do have a lot of produce in my fridge at any given time. And I think people are scared of doing that because they think it's going to go bad because they don't know what to make with it. But that's really like something I always tell people is like simple is sustainable, and you don't need recipes. And I think that's why, my Cook by Color has been kind of stalled out lately, because I have a really hard time telling people that they have to do things a certain way or like have a recipe to follow. And I think that as a generation of people who didn't grow up learning how to cook intuitively or, on a regular basis, they are so like set in fear when they go into the kitchen. Like, I don't know what to make, I don't know what to bring home or how I'm going to use that cucumber or that eggplant or that pomegranate. And I think that's something that's like my biggest mission in life is to help people overcome that fear and just bring home the pomegranate or the cucumber and make something. Like, it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be a recipe. You don't have to follow someone else's rules or buy a list of ingredients a mile long to make one dish. You can do things like Google how to peel a pomegranate and then figure out how to get it open and try it and get inspired. Like, look online, put it on a salad, put it in a stir, like whatever. So yeah, I don't know. I went off on a tangent.
That's okay. So one thing that my husband and I have done recently, and I'm wondering if this is something that you recommend to your clients, but we are in a part of a CSA, which is a community supported agriculture, I believe. So you pay up front for like a quarter, and every other week we get a box of all this like seasonal local produce. 50% of it, I'm like, I have no idea what to do with this. So like I do what you said is if I have, say like I got turnips, I was like, I have no idea how to cook turnips. So I just Googled turnip recipes, and then my philosophy is when in doubt, roast it.
Yeah, totally.
Roasted everything that I didn't know what to do with. But it's been a good opportunity because I've found some new produce that I really like. And I found some produce that I really don't like. Like, I don't like radishes. Sorry, I just can't do it. And maybe that's because I haven't prepared them in a way that I like. But that's a really cool way, and it's really affordable. We pay $30 every other week for a huge box of organic seasonal produce. So do you have any other recommendations for our listeners of ways that they can maybe get involved or get more produce into their lives? Or you'd mentioned some people are afraid of buying it because it goes bad. Do you have any hacks for your clients or people that don't want you want their produce to last longer?
I think that CSAs are great. I actually have never done a CSA, but I mean, for people who don't love the grocery store and touching all the fruits and veggies, I think that would be a really awesome.
It's like your Disneyland.
Yeah, it's like you're like the creepy vegetable person.
Totally. I am totally the creepy vegetable person.
Why is that lady massaging the watermelon? Please, excuse me, can you please stop massaging the watermelon?
It's so funny because my husband, like, he will go, oh, that was weird. That was him. He will go to the market with me, like, really under protest. But it's like, yeah, exactly. So, okay. So, but, back on topic, going to places like, Trader Joe's, which a lot of people love. I do too for certain things. When you go to the store, you have to be your own advocate. Like if you're not going to do a CSA, which I think is an excellent suggestion, one that I'm probably going to steal. If you are going to just be grocery shopping for yourself, I think that something is very under spoken about is you have to really like look at the produce. And I think that starts with bringing home fresh produce instead of like what to do with it once it's home, how to keep it fresh. A lot of times you'll buy like bags of lettuce or whatever. If you really look at the dates on these, items, a lot of them are, especially at Trader Joe's and Costco. If you buy like, big things of lettuce or spinach that are in those bags, like they're already kind of not that fresh when they get to the store. And so if you see like wet spots in it or any of the leaves that are kind of going bad or the date is like tomorrow, you gotta wrestle around and get in the back and get the fresh stuff.
Get
like
your
don't
hands
be
dirty.
Totally. Like don't be scared to be the creepy person fondling the produce. Like you really you have to do that, because if you're not, then you're just gonna bring home spoiled produce. And I don't like being the person who's like, hey, the last time I bought cucumbers, they got slimy and moldy and then try to get your money. Like often it just gets, you lose out. So starting with picking produce, I think is the most important thing to making sure that it stays fresh a long time. And then making sure that you kind of have a system in your refrigerator so that the stuff that you bought on Sunday is closer to the front of the line than the stuff that you bought on Tuesday, so that even though you're excited about those asparagus you bought on Tuesday, you still have, 3 heads of broccoli that you bought on Sunday that probably should get used first. And being mindful, it's kind of a culinary school thing, first in, first out. So making sure that you like rotate things in your fridge to know what you have.
I like that. I don't know if this is right, but I take my greens and I just throw paper towels into them. It just absorbs a lot of the moisture and has it last longer, especially herbs that go pretty bad. I have no methodology to it. I just literally put a piece of paper towel. Do you ever do that?
No, I totally do that.
Okay.
I do that. I absolutely do that. And then herbs, a lot of times I will stick it in a glass of water with like just a little bit of water. That's something that I highly recommend people do. Actually, going back to the last question about what do you keep in your fridge to throw some color into it, having cilantro, parsley, chives, dill, like whatever your preferred kind of herbs are, and maybe rotating those so you try new things, and literally just taking a little scoop off of the plant and throwing it on top. I mean, that's a great way to add some color. Flavor.
Stephanie, is there such thing as too much color?
Not in my book. I mean, I'm sure that there are people who would disagree with me. But those are probably the people who are eating big plates of pasta or gravy or something. And I don't really care what they have to say. I will have all the color.
It's funny because brown in my mind just kind of it's like I think of poop, and then I'm easily transitioning from like, I don't want to eat poop. And then it's like, I don't know. Does anybody else? No, just me?
This is what happens when you have a male on the show. Things go.
No,
I'm just used to like cup of noodle. Does cup of noodle incorporate colors?
No.
No. So I probably shouldn't be eating
I mean, brown is technically a color, but
don't they have like little peas and carrots?
Yeah, some like Moon Man peas and corn. That was like my staple diet when I was in college. By the way,
that's my favorite thing when people are talking about eating vegetables and they're like, "Well, I eat corn and potatoes and peas,
starch."
And I'm like, okay, not really vegetables, but okay.
So why don't we try to get some like reds and purples in there and maybe some more green?
And I always find that most people can do spinach because it's so versatile and it doesn't have a lot of taste. I'm like, man, throw that in everything.
Yeah, totally.
Stephanie, besides the Align Life podcast, I know that's probably your newest favorite thing. Are there other people that are in your wolf pack, or people that you, or sort of mentors, or educators that you like following on social media, or a book that you've read, or is there something that you're currently looking at that you feel like is really worthy for other people to look into?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I have had a long love affair, from afar, obviously, with Steph Gaudreau of Stupid
Oh,
Easy
she's from San
Paleo.
Diego too.
Is she?
Hmm.
I just anything that she puts out, I'm super into. From food to fitness to mindset, I really, really like her stuff. Uh, I mean, a lot of my friends, just like people that I went to through the NTA program with, people you've had on the podcast, actually.
You hit up your whole circle.
Ellie Short and Danielle, both of them are just incredible to me. Her book, Danielle's book, was huge in my process.
I try to read that in public as often as I possibly can.
Oh, that's good for your ego, right?
Yeah, it's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually a book that is totally unrelated to health and wellness, that really did it for me was, oh my God, How to Be a Badass.
Oh, we read that too.
Jen
Love
Sincero.
that.
Yeah. I really liked that. And actually that was one of the more defining moments in my like, okay, I'm going to quit my job in corporate finance and go get a nutrition degree and start culinary school at 30 years old. So, yeah, that one was definitely big.
Talk to me about that, because that's actually really critical. I was even speaking with my wife last night about like where she's trying to go in her life. And I think this is a super common thing for people to really look at their lives. It seems like around 30 to 40, it's almost like we have this like midlife crisis, you could call it. And all of a sudden now we want to question things. We want to say, what am I really doing with myself? Why am I here? Like, what was it about that time period that not only, made you question things, but also like made you take action and be willing to, like, you played the long game, right? Like going back to school, going back to, culinary, putting out like this whole other thing. Now you're on a completely different path, which, just from looking at you on the screen here, it looks like you feel happy about things and the way that things have turned out. Obviously, maybe you're not where you want to be entirely yet.
Right.
There's always more, but it seems like just externally, you're like, yeah, I'm in a good place.
Absolutely. I took a job at a brewery, in the finance department. And
sure, Stephanie, it was the finance department. Yeah.
No, I was
sampling.
Totally. That sounds like a great gig.
Yeah. No, and I was the weird girl. I'm always the weird girl.
There's a theme here.
I was the weird girl who would like bring my lunches and like take pictures outside and take pictures of my food, and everyone else is like, yeah, let's go get a pint on our lunch hour and
sure,
have like,
and you're like, what color
Monday.
is it?
Yeah, donut Monday and taco Thursday, and all this junk food brought in by the company all the time. And I was just like, man, I do not fit in here. This is really hard. And yeah, I mean, just working 40 hours a week and on a computer and filing all day, I was like, this sucks. Like, I can't do this forever. And I had already, Cook by Color was already a thing and I was working on it, but I didn't have a lot of energy to do that after having my soul sucked every day. So I was in this kind of really sad depression where I'm like, well, what is this all about? We were renting a house that was really expensive in the Bay Area in Sonoma County. And we were kind of like, man, it feels like we just worked to live in this house and we're not going to have much to show for it. And so, yeah, it kind of became one of the quotes in that book was an Anais Nin quote where it was like, the pain about remaining tightly wound in a bud is worse than trying to, go and be set free. And obviously that I butchered that, but
we know what you mean.
Okay. Thank you guys. So yeah, I took that to a real extreme and I enrolled in the NTA. I was one of the oldest people in my culinary school classes, these 18-year-old boys talking about video games and then me like at the same chopping table. So That was fun and really, really, good for my ego. And yeah, and then shortly after I did the NTA program, we kept going on that theme where it was like, well, what do we really want? And we ended up moving to Oregon. So we just picked up and moved. We have no family or friends here. Didn't know anyone. And in the last 8 months since we've been here, we bought a house. And I'm 24 weeks pregnant. So things are good.
Yeah. Congrats. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks. So yeah,
it's cool because so often on this show, it seems like when we talk to the guests, there is sort of like this, there's so much pain associated with staying the same that people finally get to the point where they make a decision. Like Tony Robbins says, your shoulds become musts. Essentially, now all of a sudden, boom, you like take that big leap and, you change your path and you change your direction. I think more people need to be asking those types of questions, which is like, what is it that's truly going to make me happy? So for you, it sounds like, Oregon, freedom and so forth. That's huge. So guys, if you're listening to this, number one, understand what Stephanie did, which is she identified an area that was giving her problems. She got pissed off enough to actually do something about it. And then she was brave, right? She stepped into her identity. She recognized her genius. And then now she's like in a completely different place. Now, the cool part is every single one of you that's listening to this, you're in the same space. It's all the same. So ask a great question, followed up by massive, massive action, and then reap the benefits. So, man, that's really cool, Stephanie. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that. That's cool.
Yeah, no, and he's absolutely right. Like, honestly, from cigarettes and couch sitting to Oregon and baby making, I honestly can't even.
I feel like that's your first book right here.
It's been a crazy 5 years, but that's what it is. It's a process, and so you can't get discouraged when you're like, oh, okay, I took this job I really don't like, but hopefully this gets, everything, every piece of my puzzle, from Weight Watchers to the brewery job to whatever, it all played a very vital role in getting to the point where I'm at where I am now. So, enjoy the journey.
Totally. And it sounds like that's how you work with your clients too, is recognizing where they're currently at, where they've been and where they want to go, and just taking those small baby steps to get there. And they're going to have forward progress. They're going to have backward progress, but it's all okay, because that just defines your story. As long as you stay focused on where you want to go and staying true to your overall goals and missions and values, like those little, mishaps, they just become part of your story. They don't define the story.
Absolutely.
Stephanie, if people want to find out a little bit more about you or what you're doing, can you give them, a few things that they can find you through?
My Instagram is where I'm most active. That's at Cook by Color. And then my website is cookbycolornutrition.com. I don't really do the Facebook thing very often, but yeah. Yeah, super lame.
Wow.
I did have a couple.
Sorry,
you
Mark.
like Facebook?
There's only billions of people on it, but that's cool.
Yeah. It's so hard to
problem.
Yeah. I did want to leave people with some actionable things. So yeah, this is kind of like my list that I go through when I first work with someone. Small changes, don't get overwhelmed. There's nothing to be overwhelmed about. And I think that's a really big part of the success of the people that I work with. So, shop with the seasons and the sales. Usually what's on season is on sale. So that works out really easily. Get inspired by recipes, but only, incorporate a new recipe once a week. Like, limit yourself and try to, look at a recipe and say, oh, well, I don't have whatever it is, that spice or that, what can I do instead? And just, improv a little bit. Like, give yourself permission to not follow all the instructions. Like, you can do it. Simple is sustainable is like my number one thing. Like, don't overcomplicate things. And to that end, I think ingredient meals are really everyone's friend when they're first starting this out. And that's a really great way to do the color thing. So you have a little bit of sauerkraut and a little bit of cucumber and some protein and an avocado. And then all of a sudden you have this really colorful plate and didn't have to cook at all. And then make messes once. I feel like people get really overwhelmed by the amount of dishes that you have to actually do when you cook. So if you're going to make chicken breast or chicken thighs or a steak or whatever, maybe double it and make 2. And then you always have like a stash of protein that you can do the ingredient meal with. So yeah, cook once, eat at least twice is my thing. Like, make it easy on yourself. Every single night we cook. I'm not a meal prep person. Like, I'm not going to sit there on Sunday and spend 8 hours prepping, containers of exactly the same thing for the week. But I think that if you plan to cook for 45 minutes a day, and do about 20 minutes worth of dishes and cleaning, so about an hour a day, you can eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day and cook just that one time. And it doesn't have to be the same thing every day. And always be defrosting. Like, always be defrosting.
I love that.
Every day I'm defrosting.
Yeah, exactly. I'm so cool, you guys. I have a plate in my fridge, and if there's not something on it, like, there's a problem. There's always something. It's like a visual reminder when you open your fridge, like, oh, I don't have anything taken out for tomorrow. I need to get on that.
We do that too. We have a bowl.
Yeah,
so
perfect.
That's good. Didn't even know I was following one of your tips.
That's cool.
Anything else, Stephanie? Those are awesome tips.
No, that's all of them.
You crushed it. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We will definitely have you back on. Guys, if you like this episode, please leave us a review and share with a friend or a loved one who you think could benefit from some of this information. Be sure to check out Stephanie at Cook by Color on Instagram and at her website, cookbycolornutrition.com. And we look forward to talking with you next time. Have a great day.